I want to talk to you about something that when you first hear me getting into this video, it's going to seem unspiritual, maybe even bizarre. But keep listening, and I think you'll see where I'm going, and I think you'll see how it makes sense, and it actually does apply to our spiritual lives. I want to talk about the two ways that people use their hands against each other to cause physical harm. The first way is with fists. You see this two men who are going to face off in a fight. Seems like 9 times out of 10, maybe more often, fists come up, and before long they're throwing blows at each other, trying to knock each other out or break the other guy's nose, whatever. It's an attempt to defend yourself and to do an injury or some kind of harm to the person you're fighting. And typically a fight like that is between two people of relatively equal ability. One may be bigger, one may be stronger, one may be faster, but generally in a exchange of blows like that, each of them has a chance of winning the fight. There's another kind of way people use their hands against each other, and that's when you have people who there's no equality at all. The one is clearly outclassed by the other. It's not really even a fight. There's no way the weaker person is going to win. And that kind of blow is what you would call a slap. It's not with a fist coming forward. It's when somebody opens their hand and reaches out and hits the other person across the face. And that's not a blow that's intended to win a fight against someone who could potentially beat you. The reason that you would slap someone is because you're showing contempt for them. You're showing a lack of respect. So it's not a battle between equals. This is clearly one person who is far more dominant than another person. And it's not in any way a fair fight. Keep that in your mind, and I'm going to come back to it in a second. Many of you remember the story. We talked about it just a few days ago in the previous video I did. The story of David when his son Absalom rises up in rebellion against him and tries to take the kingdom of Israel away from him. And David is on the run, and he writes about it in the 3rd Psalm. He's looking back over the time when this happens, and he's describing the emotions he had and the prayer that he prayed. But listen to the beginning of the psalm, what David says. Verse 1, Psalm 3. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. So David's situation literally is desperate. He is literally on the run for his life. His son and his son's followers are pursuing him. What does verse 3 tell us, however? But you, O Lord, art a shield for me. And I use the word art because I'm used to the King James Bible. You are a shield for me, a defensive object. Lord, you're the one that raises up between me and my enemies. You're the one who protects me. You're a shield for me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. And then he says in verse 4, I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. And because God hears David's desperate cry, what happens? Verse 5, I lay down and slept. In other words, God gave me peace. Then he goes on, I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. And so because God gave me peace, because God gave me the ability to sleep at night, David says, even when I'm on the run for my life. What? Verse 6, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. And now I'm going to get to the point of the psalm that I just really want to zoom in on here for a second. You see, if the psalm had stopped at verse 6, it would be a beautiful message, powerful message. But it doesn't stop there, it goes on. Watch verse 7. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God. Now here it is, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. Now you stop and think about that. It's describing God hitting the enemy of David. But in this image, it's not God's fist, because this is not a battle between relative equals. This is not a battle of people who are both desperate to win. God is clearly in control of this fight. God doesn't need to exercise his power in a way that shows desperation or fear. There's no fear with God. What does it say? You have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. What's that describing? A slap. And what did we just say? A slap is different than a punch. A punch is something you do because you're afraid of what the person might do to you. So you want to hit them first and knock them out or injure them and take them out of the fight. A slap is something you do to someone for whom you have no respect. Someone for whom you are showing, listen, contempt. And that's what God does to the enemies of David. David, the righteous king. David, who has those rising up against him, who have evil motives, trying to depose him. David cries out to God. God rises up as David's shield, and God slaps his enemies on the cheekbone. But when God slaps you, listen, it's more than just an insult, because the rest of verse 7 says, you have broken the teeth of the ungodly. I don't know what you're facing. We can all talk about COVID-19. We can all talk about different situations. But the truth is we're all at different places in our life. But there is one thing we all share, that from time to time we face enemies. Whether that takes the form of evil people trying to destroy our walk with the Lord, whether it simply takes the form of circumstances like sickness, financial troubles, things going wrong, whatever it might be. We all face enemies that try to undermine our relationship with God, that try to chip away at the foundation of our faith in God. And you know what you have to do? You cry out to God, like David cries out to the Lord. I cried out to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. God wants to give you rest. I lay down and slept. God wants to give you strength. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me, and as a result, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. And listen, this is not an effort for God. This is not some kind of a fair fight between equals. All God does, and this is obviously just a word picture, God doesn't literally slap anybody, but the idea is for God, there's no effort. There's no work here. God is not in any way matched by your enemies. He doesn't have to raise his fist. God just slaps. And a slap from God is so powerful that the teeth of the wicked come flying out of their mouth. That's the God you serve. That's the power and the strength and the majesty of the God you call your Lord. And that's the way the psalm ends, verse 8. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is upon your people. In this struggle for his life, David never had to go to war against his own son because he cried out to God and God took care of it. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're dealing with, whatever it is or whoever it is that's trying to undermine your faith in God and trying to chip away at the foundation of your relationship with God through their ongoing attacks, make God your shield. Make God the one in whom you depend. And watch God slap that enemy on the cheekbone, break their teeth, because he is your salvation. And I'm not literally saying that if it's someone that God's going to make something happen to them. God has his way and he has his time of doing everything. So don't just wait for your enemies to fall over dead or whatever, but just trust God. Put your faith in God no matter what's happening, no matter what anybody's saying or doing. God will take care of it if you will ask him, if you will trust him, and if you will put your confidence in him as your Lord.